G'day guys, what do you think of my boat? Nice, eh? It's taking me I'm on this side of the camera because I'm just not photogenic. The conditions here are horrible. I've had a lot of trouble working vinyl Ester resin in the heat and humidity here. I've had to drop the catalyst down to 75% of what they recommend, so I've got enough time to smooth it off and work it in. Other techniques that they recommend, I've had to throw out. Things like they recommend using a brush to dab in and push out the air bubbles. Can't get the resin out of the brush after you use it, so every 300 ml you're throwing out a dollar a brush. The rollers they sold me, they soak up 50 to 100 ml of resin every single time, and you throw them out after you use them, so you're losing 50 100 ml of resin out of 300 ml every single time, and you're throwing out a roller, which probably costs I dread to think how much I paid for their really expensive quality lint-free rollers. So I'm not using those. The gloves they gave me were lady size large, so they didn't fit my hands. I'm not that big, surely. And they had no powder in them, so to get them on I had to wash my hands, dry them in front of the fan, and when they were completely dry I could then get them inside the powder-free gloves. And they didn't fit though, but they're better than nothing. And then I ran out of those, so I tried using riggers gloves. That didn't work, so I did it just to finish up what I was doing. I did it barehanded, and then I can't use acetone to clean my hands, so I tried just scraping it off with a razor, cut the juices out of my hands, blood everywhere. And yeah, I've had all sorts of troubles. Other things they said is like leave an overhang, like a 3/4 of an inch overhang, and come and cut it off with it it's gelled, and then when it's a bit more gelled, come through with a razor blade and trim off the edges. I bought a Stanley knife. The blade on that wasn't sharp enough to cut through it. I tried using my cutthroat razor. It's my expensive razor, and it's just too thin, didn't work. I waited for it to dry. I tried using serrated tin snips, and that didn't work. It cracked the edges of the glass, so I was just resigned to the fact I was going to have to sand my edges, because you can see how it gets rough. And that's sanding. That makes a bajillion microscopic needle sharp needles which get under your skin, and that feels fantastic. Makes you feel alive, which is just terrible. So what I do now is I thin some resin and soak the plywood so it gets waterproof resin soaked into it, and then when it's tacky I put on the cloth, and then I get my scissors and I cut it perfectly along the edge so it fits perfectly. And then as I stretch it out, I'm still dragging fibers off the edge, right? That's from stretching out the resin as I squeegee the resin out, stretch out the fibers, which is good. And the Stanley knife won't cut them off. I was going to have to sand it, but then the razor I used to try and shave the resin off, which cut the bejesus out of my hand, is these aftermarket cheap ones, Craft-Right, and they're just fantastic. I put them in the Stanley knife. I didn't think they'd work because they're cheaper than the Stanley ones, and they're actually sharper. They'll cut through that when it's rock hard. They cut through when it's jarred. It doesn't crack the resin. I don't have to sand anymore. Even the drips underneath, which I sometimes don't get off, they cut through that. They just save me all that sanding, which is fantastic. Another thing, touching stuff, extra large, powdered. I can get them on when I'm sweaty. I've just had the most productive day ever. I've gotten 4 of these done today. 3 of them are ones I had to touch up from other days, but I'm still counting them as I got them done today. And yeah, these razors cut. Glassing looks fantastic, whereas my other jobs was not happy with them at all. Instead of brushes and rollers and things, I make make these up. One, it's got at least one good, reasonably good straight edge, and I sand off every edge, and use them to stir up the catalyst and resin, and then I pour the resin on, and I kind of squeegee, I trowel it around and give it a couple seconds to soak in. And then any parts that haven't soaked in, rather than use a brush which is disposable and throw them away, like push the brush in to get the air bubbles out, I use so I get a layer of resin on here and a layer of resin there, and I just use like hydraulic pressure and just push the resin down through the cloth, and the air bubbles come out. And then as you just move it around, it gets a really smooth surface. The pattern of the weave is still coming through in places where I've come then and squeezed it out, but it's still I'm really happy with that. It's fantastic. Yeah, so I trowel it round, give it a couple of seconds, and any spots that don't get the air out, I then come and hydraulic and push it through, and I can even kind of trowel it, not using this edge, but using the liquid as my edge, and it leaves a smooth surface, and just kind of push it down in. It goes really quickly first time every time, and then I come through, and I don't know if you can see these lines going this way. You ignore those. That's just what holds the biaxial in place. Underneath there's a layer of fibers going this way, and on top there's a layer of fibers going this way. So when I squeegee it, I come through and I still try and use a bead of liquid on that straight edge, and I pull the fibers, and I get the liquid, the excess out, and it leaves a big bead here. Then I can push that around to work that excess where I need it, or scrape it off if I don't need it anymore. But it's working heaps better than anything else on YouTube and what they recommended, and it's taken me along, I don't know, two weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks since New Year's Eve. A lot of mucking around, trying to develop techniques that work up here without having to throw away brushes and rollers every 300 mils. But I'm finally got work did it. I'm happy to show you, and yeah, productive, really happy. It's not a bad day today. It is ridiculously hot, but that's all right. Like 2 days ago it was so hot it hurt to breathe, so I couldn't work. I didn't have gloves. I had to wait for the shops to open yesterday, so I just jumped on my bike. Well, it was too hot to breathe. I jumped on my bike and rode 20 k's. It's only going to make me fitter and stronger here. So then today when I'm working, the heat's not bothering me, but I still shower off with a hose to cool down every chance I get, which is at least every half hour. And I'm drinking about 10 litres of water a day as well. Imagine that. Anyway, I'm done boring you. Just want to show you my lovely work, update you on my techniques. See ya.